Hi everyone, welcome to episode 122 of Woolen Spinning. It is August 20th, 2019, and we have a huge show, so let's just jump right into it. Hi everyone, so it's really good to be here. I want to welcome Eve and Charlotte and Sarah and Becca and Rebecca and Kelly and Suzanne. Thank you so much, you guys, for being here. We have had very few shows this summer. There's been a lot going on behind the scenes. We've had a very challenging summer. And I just want to say thank you to everybody who sent us messages and notes, especially you guys have for the most part addressed them directly to me and said that you're thinking of my family, and I just really appreciate it, and I want to say thank you. I had really hoped this summer that I would be able to spend some time working on stuff for the fall. I had this list of stuff that I was really hoping that I could organize and execute, and I had it all planned out, and I just want to say thank you for your patience, because a lot of that stuff just is not done. And I have been thinking about it, and I have been mulling it over in my brain a little bit here and there, but with everything that has happened, I've just sort of put it on the back burner, and I'm going to start chipping away at it and working on it in the fall as I feel able and as I feel my energy is able to handle that and able to manage that. So thank you so much to everybody, and I just really appreciate the notes and messages that you guys have sent. So for those who aren't really sure what I'm talking about, if this is your first time checking out the show, there's a couple of posts on Patreon that you can read, patreon.com/wellforpearls. I really don't want to go into stuff here on this show, this episode, because I'll probably end up bawling and then we won't have a show at all. But also that this isn't the space for it. So if you're interested, there's just been a lot going on in my family. And again, thank you for the condolences and for the kind words. You guys are just amazing. Because we have such a stacked show, I wanted to start with some breed and color studies, because you guys have been continuing to create in the background all summer. The Ravelry group has been just as busy as normal. The Slack channel's been hopping. You guys have just been amazing. And every time I feel like I want to check in, or that I kind of want to get out of my own head and just want to be a part of this amazing community, you guys are there and you're chatting away and you're creating. So I thought we would start with some breed and color studies. I have two projects that I wanted to share with you. And then I have some works in progress. I have two actually that I've been working on relatively monogamously. So I thought that I would share those with you. I have one finished spin. And then I wanted to share a couple of projects that are finished that are nothing to do with hand spinning. They are with commercial cotton yarn, and it's some weaving that I've been working on. So I thought we'd finish out the show with the weaving segment. For those who aren't as interested, you can finish watching after we talk about my finished spin. So let's do breed and color studies first. I'm going to move around the cameras and we'll talk about Debbie's project first. So this is Debbie's finished scarf, and the photos will cycle through, so you guys will have an opportunity to see. This is my own photo. So this is what the carded kit for our breed and color studies looked like. And we started this study as a community back in April. Our next one is starting October 1st. There will be more information forthcoming in September. And Debbie's spin was, she made her own she prepped her own fiber to create her own yarn. So I'm going to actually read what she wrote. And this is Debbie from Portland, Oregon. And I just thought that the reflections that she had and that she'd written about her project were really timely and really great for many people in the community that are project planning like this and going from the fiber and figuring out what they're going to do with it all the way through to the finished product. So Debbie writes, the Dorset Horn was my first breed and color study. I ordered both the prepared Rolags with the blended colorways and the kit with the individual colors. So for this particular breed and color, because we always do through the summer a carded preparation, you could choose between Rolags that Katrina had made or the kit. So she got both. I gave myself the following challenges. Number 1, to spin the prepared Rolags as is using supported long draw, which I had not previously attempted. And she puts in great teaching video, Rachel. So thank you, Debbie. I'm glad that was helpful. Number 2, to hand card the individual colors into Rolags so I could spin them long draw as well. So this is actually, that photo there was her doing that. And number 3, to figure out how to combine yarn from the individual colors and the blended light and dark Rolags in some way that was interesting. Hence the scarf. Long draw was challenging but fun. I practiced on some fibers and then spun 2 bobbins of singles with the 2 sets of lighter and darker mixed Rolags as singles. I spun the single colors in a gradient from light to dark without mixing them. I then plied the lighter blended yarn with the lighter colors in the gradient and the darker blended yarn with the darker colors in the gradient into both 2-ply yarns. So that's what you see here. So one single is a gradient from light to dark, so from the yellow to the dark browny red that we had, and the other one is the other strand of that single is the Rolag, the light Rolag, or the darker skein is the dark Rolag as the second single. Very clever. I thought I was doing well with the spinning, but was very startled by how much the yarn bloomed after soaking. So that's something that you'll find with these down breeds. The fine wools are the same. They really bloom with washing. The down breeds, though, are more... They bloom, but not to the same extent as, like, say, Polworth will, but they bloom and they have a certain... I'm looking for a word, and it's not coarse, not toothy, but they have a certain density to them, I think, that you sort of think they're going to act more like a long wool, and then they don't. But they have a different type of crimp. All of a sudden, I found that I had made bulky yarn rather than the expected DK. So I made a scarf knitting with 8mm needles, and I learned a lot. I would like to hear more about how one can get thinner yarn using long draw. Just more practice and fewer fibers drafted at a time, ? Thanks. So yeah, that's just it. A lot of practice, Debbie. I think you made absolutely beautiful yarn in this case, and your finished scarf is just beautiful. I love how even though that single in each of your yarns was the blended Rolag, you still managed to create a gradient in the scarf, which is pretty amazing. And your results were just awesome. So yes, more practice with long draw. And I think with long draw, people are really afraid as the twist is picking up into the fiber supply and as it's traveling up toward your fiber supply. Because remember, with long draw, your twist is between your fingers, unlike with worsted where the twist stays forward of your drafting hand. I think what happens is people start to worry about that twist running up and they tend to draft more fibers. Or they go the other way and they draft too thin. And it's practice and learning that dance between yourself and your wheel of allowing enough twist and not enough twist to go in. The second project that I wanted to highlight was a project. So I'm going to turn off this slideshow. We're going to turn on this slideshow. This is by Barbara. These photos are in order, but they've started somewhere in the middle, which is kind of too bad. But Barb's project, she lives in Golden Valley, Minnesota. And Wendy's given up doing tax returns to join in. I'm very glad. Sarah said, speaking of blooming with regular merino, I usually spin to a weight one smaller than I want to end up with after finishing. Yeah, that's actually what I do, Sarah. So if I want to end up with a superwash if I want to end up with a DK or a sport weight yarn, I tend to spin a heavy fingering. So it's okay to go down in anticipation of the yarn blooming. Spongy is a great word, Rebecca. That's exactly what I was looking for. The fiber tends to be more spongy. I love the Downs, which you guys know who've been here for a while. I just absolutely love them. So, all right, this is Barbara. I asked her on Slack yesterday if I could share these photos of her finished dress because you see her face in this, and she posted them right away and helped me to make sure that I could find them and download them for the podcast. So, Barb, thank you so much because you didn't have to do that. And I had said, I know it's last minute. We can wait till September, but I just really appreciate it. And I really wanted to share this project. So she has done just an amazing job. Oh, that's so fun, Becca. Her gran lived in Golden Valley when she was growing up. That's so funny. So Barb did an amazing job, and she was the one that did pillows last time with our last breed and color study. So this time she's done a dress. Barb is a weaver, as you can see. I'm going to read you what she wrote. It's quite long, but I'll go slow. And I really appreciated her thoughtfulness around how she organized this project. And it's very much how I want to, or how I'm trying to proceed with my making as I move forward. And so I really appreciated her thoughtfulness. Okay, so Barb says, started this project with the idea of making a piece of clothing, which is amazing. I have made scarves, pillows, and pouches from hand spun and hand woven, but not clothing. I really wanted to take on yardage. When the Breed and Color study with Crafty Jacks was released, it inspired me further. I defined 4 steps in the process. First, spin the yarn. It was 200 grams with white and black roll eggs mixed with the she says brown Dorset. I think she mixed hers with the brown Dorset. I'm not sure if she mixed in more colors into hers. I think that she did. I didn't separate the colors, rather took them randomly and spun in a 2-ply. It gave me 360 yards and I knew that would work. I made a muslin to get a good fit and knew the dimensions of the pieces. With the width known, I could now plan the weaving. I found a pattern by Megan Nelson that allowed for multiple fabrics called Carrie. I decided to use commercial black yarn as the warp and used a weft-faced twill. So weft-faced means that when you look at the woven fabric, what your eye is immediately drawn to is the weft. There's more weft, which are the yarns that go this way on a weaving versus the warp that goes this way. The weft goes this way. There's more weft showing in the finished fabric. So this photo is perfect to show that. So the warp is largely hidden or not as obvious. I hope I'm explaining that properly. This is when Erica's not here today, but she's really helpful with making sure that we're explaining weaving and using weaving terms appropriately, which is really, really helpful because she runs Weavolution. So it's just really nice to have that, make sure that we're talking about things properly so as not to confuse. 1 pick of black with 3 of hand spun. I had a little less than planned, but enough for the pieces. I finished a sample of the weaving, 2-minute wash in hot water and rinse in similar temperatures, fluffed up the Dorset, but no felting. Finished the full cloth the same way. Went to a fabric warehouse, SR Harris, and found black woven wool that was of similar weight and a contrasting lining. Waiting for the yardage to dry, then time to cut. Planning on edge finishing on all the edges of the hand woven fabric. Yeah, I could see how, because your hand woven fabric, like you don't have selvages when you're cutting into your hand woven fabric because you're cutting the selvages away. So I was actually wondering about that when I saw her post this on Instagram, whether or not you would have to think about edge finishing. So for me personally, this is actually one of the reasons why I want to get my serger working again. My mom's going to take it in for me in September, and because she's going to give it to me, which is amazing. I think I've mentioned that on the podcast back in June. And that's actually one of the things that I'm really looking forward to, is being able to edge finish my stuff. I was nervous about cutting the fabric, but finally did it. I ended up with a half yard left over. Cut out the black contrast wool and lining. I think I'll need to serge the cut edges to keep them from pulling apart. Used fusible interfacing in any area that may have stress. Used bias tape for the shoulders and the waist, and it turned out great. It is warm, but still, so will be best in winter. What a project. I think I'll try it again. I love that her final reflection is that she thinks she'll try it again. That was actually one of the reasons why I wanted to read all of what she had written, because you get to the end of a project like that, and you're going to have one or two responses. You're either going to never want to do that again in your entire life, or you're maybe going to want to do it again, but maybe change a whole bunch of stuff or do it in a different way. And the fact that her knee-jerk reaction is that she'll try it again, I thought was really positive. So thank you so much, Barb and Debbie, for sharing. I really appreciate both of you sharing and taking the time. Both are amazing projects. This dress is really quite incredible. One of the things that I think is really quite amazing about I don't even know actually what they call themselves. Do they call themselves indie sewing pattern designers? I haven't been part of the sewing community for quite a few years now. And I don't I follow a couple of indie pattern designers that are in the sewing world, but I haven't really kept my ear to the ground in that realm. But so whatever they call themselves, what I think is really amazing is the diversity of patterns that are available out there and the different body shapes. And there's sewing pattern designers now that specifically will be designing for specific body types. So, a couple of Sewaholic here locally in Vancouver, she talks about on her blog and on the website, like she designs specifically for long torsoed, curvy women, because most of her patterns are designed more for the feminine, for a feminine leaning. And that's sort of what she does. So her patterns are always smaller up top. They're a little bit bigger down below. You can modify them and whatnot, but it's just really cool that there's these different designers out there that are not only designing a lot of variety, like pieces like this, where you have multiple cuts and multiple pieces where you can put in whatever you want, but also that they're designing for so many different body types as well. And there's specific designers that are doing stuff for specific people, and then you can modify from there. And as your confidence grows, you're able to then you'll modify patterns as you feel able. It's very cool. And there's a lot of sewists out there who are blogging about and Instagramming about how they're modifying their sewing patterns so that people can continue to learn. It's very cool. All right, that is a very becoming physique. I totally agree, Marla. It just totally suits her, and the dress just looks amazing. It's very, 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 very flattering. So, Barb, I hope you get a chance to really wear this dress a lot. All right, because we have so much to talk about, I am going to continue on. So we are going to talk about some works in progress, and I actually created a slideshow of this as well because I don't have any of the original fiber anymore because I've been spinning it all. So this is Smith & U. I've talked about this on the podcast before, but because the episodes have been so far between this summer and there's been a lot of gaps and breaks, which is not normal for the podcast, I thought that I would show you what the original fiber looked like, what Marianne had dyed, and then what it looked like on the bobbin. And I thought I would also really quickly show you what the little nests look like. So I've been stripping it down. I started spinning this on our June maker morning. It was something that I had wanted to start for a really long time. And I decided to just start unbraiding it to about 2 feet of fiber. I would rip it off and then I would strip it down into these little strips, and then I'd spin all those, and then I'd take another 2 feet, strip it all down, pre-draft it, spin all those. Anyways, I'm down to the last 2 feet. So I've got these to spin, and I have these to spin, and this will actually be finished. So this has been on my wheel all summer. I haven't worked on it a ton. The weekend, so my dad died on August 1st, and then on the Friday, I was running on about 2 hours of sleep because I got home at about 3:30 in the morning. And then through Friday, we were all kind of running on just like a few hours of sleep. And so I actually sat in our living room, and my brother and my sister-in-law and all of our kids, the 4 kids, because there's 4 cousins, and my mom and my husband, we all sat and just visited. And I actually spun a ton on this. I think I probably spun over half of this project. And there was times when I would just sit there and I would like let you know how the single is like threaded through the guides on the wheel? I would finish one of these and I would let it kind of go and wind onto the bobbin so that there was no single coming through the guides. And I would just treadle and let the wheel treadle, and I wouldn't actually be spinning. And then we'd get up and we'd make tea or we'd make coffee or whatever. And then I would rethread it all and like spin some more of these little nests. And like I said, I probably spun 50 grams that weekend, just doing that. And it was actually really therapeutic because I felt like I needed to do something with my hands. I felt like I needed to do something with my feet. And my sister-in-law, her brother was actually getting married that weekend. And they were so torn about going, and it was really difficult for them, but they ended up going. And so we had a really quiet weekend, and I spun on this. So I'm almost done. And actually, I'm really looking forward to this finished yarn. What I'm going to do is all 4 ounces are going to be on the bobbin. And I'm actually going to put the finished bobbin. So all 4 ounces will be on that Lendrum bobbin. I'll put that bobbin on my Lazy Kate, and I'm going to set up my bobbin winder. And I'm not sure if I'm going to wind onto my Leclerc weaving bobbins because they're quite a bit bigger, or my Ashford weaving bobbins. I suspect I'll use my Leclerc ones because they're bigger, and I'll wind off 33 grams onto each bobbin, and then I'll apply a traditional 3-ply. So that's my plan, is a traditional 3-ply, but I just spun all to one bobbin because I wanted to ply from the first spun end anyways. So I thought, I'm not even gonna bother with changing bobbins and trying to weigh out fiber and figuring out like what's a third, and I can do that later. So I've just been spinning, and it's turning out beautifully. So that is that project. I also picked up, when we were in Whitehorse, and I didn't show this on the last podcast, I picked up, have I mentioned I'm allergic to alpaca? I bought it anyways. I picked up this roving, it's not really comb top, it's roving. The fibers aren't aligned, they're not organized in any way, shape, or form. It's roving of ultra fine, super fine baby alpaca, and it's dyed by, so Itsy Bitsy Yarn Shop is one of the yarn shops. I think there's 2 in Whitehorse, and this is one of them. And she dyes this herself. And this was in my weaving basket, in my spinning basket, because I think I might actually spin this next. I've started my spin for my Shifty, the Shifty sweater by Andrea Mowry. We had talked about it on the last podcast. We talked about it on Maker Morning. I posted in the Slack channel the fibers that I'm going to use for it and the estimated yardages. So I may spin this, what's that word when you do it in parallel? Consecutively? With the fibers that I'm spinning for that, because I've got them all prepped. I just need to start spinning. But I might do this one as well because it's just really pretty, and I can hold my breath and not inhale alpaca dander and not have a sneezing attack. Yeah, I'm going to be sneezing like crazy. You're so right, Kelly. I might spin half of it, and if I can't keep going, I'll give the other half to Katrina, or I'll do something with it. Gift it away. I'm not sure. The other project that I had in progress, and I'm going to have to switch my cameras, so we'll talk about this in a minute, this yarn. Put these away so that they don't get completely jumbled up and messed. So when my dad got really sick after we got back from our trip, I was sort of anticipating that I was going to be spending a lot of time at the hospital. And I decided that and I didn't have anything on the needles because I knit everything when we were away on our trip, right? Because you guys remember what I showed you last episode on episode 121, like the amount of knitting that I did on our trip. I ended up not having anything on my needles. So I decided, and I had wound this yarn, which is Spin Cycles Mill Ends, that I spun back in 2014 or 15. It's in the show notes. I put it in the show notes, and I don't remember what I wrote. Let me see. 2014. So I bought it at Knits. I bought the bag of mill ends at Knit City that year. And then I spun them for Spinzilla that year, like the next week, I think, because it started, Knit City was over that weekend and Spinzilla started at midnight on that Sunday. So I spun it through that week. And then this kind of got stashed and I never knit with it. And I would pull it out of my stash and think, oh, I got to do something with this. I love this yarn so much. And then I would put it back and I just ended up not doing anything. So when I was project planning for our trip to Whitehorse, to the Yukon, I wound it and I was going to pair it with this stashed unlabeled white yarn. And I was going to do a stripy sweater. And when I ran out of the spin cycle, I was just going to finish off the lower part of the cardigan and the lower part of the sleeves with just the white yarn. And then at the last minute, I kind of thought, I don't know if I want to do that. I maybe want to rip out something I've already knit that's like a purpley color that goes with some of the colors in this. So I left it at home. So when we got home on the Sunday and I saw my dad, I realized that he was really, really sick. And I sort of figured that we'd probably be in and out of clinic and hospital and everything throughout the next month or so. And so I thought, well, I'll cast on a shawl project because it'll be easy and portable. I can carry it in my bag. I'm using my Camp Yukon bag. And I thought I'll just work on it when I can. And if I'm waiting, I've got something to work on. Well, best laid plans, that ended up not happening because he deteriorated so quickly. And, but in the meantime, I ended up with this really beautiful project to start. And so by the time that first week of August rolled around, I think I was probably about here, maybe. I was sort of through the first couple of color transitions, which you can kind of see. I know it looks a little bit washed out, but even up here, it's not as vibrant as it is in real life. So as I finish this project, I'll get some really good photos of it and you guys can really see. And, oh my goodness, you guys are so funny. Eve, you are hilarious. For spinning that alpaca, she wants me to wear a face mask and use Katrina's respirator. That's not a bad idea. I'll take pictures, okay? Anyways, so this pattern is called Sparks of Gray by Melanie Berg. And when I first started and I was down here, I cast it on one morning at like 6 a.m. because I'd gone to the gym and I'd just gotten home and the house was really quiet. And I got to like 1 or 2 stitch repeats in here because the pattern is over about 9, I think it's 9 rows, something like that. And I sort of thought, oh my goodness, what have I gotten myself into? Because you have to really pay attention. But I kept going and I just trusted the process. And this is really, really slow. We drove to Richmond on Sunday to pick up the thing that I'm going to tell you about later. And if you've been following me on Instagram, you'll know what I'm talking about. I only got 2 rows knit. And I'm not even, like, this shawl is huge, the finished shawl. And I got 2 rows knit. An hour there and an hour back. And on the way to Richmond, I only got 2 rows done. So it's not fast. I ended up not being able to work on it in the hospital because my dad ended up being on isolation. So those who know what that means, we had to wear gowns, gloves, and masks. And so I didn't want to bring my knitting out in the room. And it was more important to just sit. So I ended up not working on it at all. But I would work on it at home in the morning after I got home from the gym because I tried to keep my routine as much as possible in that last week because I felt like for my own emotional and mental health, that was really important. And this is kind of where I've gotten to. I really like it. It's really cool. And the sparks that you see throughout it, like they really kind of make me think of like stars. So it's really pretty. I'll find a photo, not a color. I'll find a photo of what the yarn looks like because the camera's washing it out quite badly and it's much brighter in real life than it's showing on the camera. And I'm not sure if it is one of those situations where I probably need to adjust the colors on my camera because I haven't podcasted. I feel a bit out of practice, to be honest with you. And so I sort of feel like when I was setting up, I was sort of like, I think this is how I do it. It's funny how that happens, hey? You do something so often and you just sort of assume you know how to do something, and then you go to do it after not doing it for a while and you sort of feel not as prepared. So those are the colors. So they're quite a bit more jewel toned than what's showing up on the camera. So you can see the difference there. But I think the finished shawl will be really pretty. This is not at all what I normally knit, and it's certainly not my normal aesthetic, but that's okay. It doesn't need to be. I think, yeah, the mill ends for this was the Pick Your Potion. It was Pick Your Potion. That was the colorway that this was. And I think it's Superwash BFL, but it didn't actually say on the mill ends bag. So I had made those notes in my Ravelry project page. But anyways, it's just a really neat pattern, very labor intensive. It's not a mindless knit at all, but it's provided a really lovely distraction. And it will probably always be known as the shawl that I intended to work on for my dad, you know, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. I think it'll always be really special because of that. And the yarn, I had been coveting the yarn for so long because I felt like it was really special yarn. So I feel like that's okay. You know, that's okay. Love the color changes with the white. Yes, I agree, Kelly. I think that's one of the things that I like the most about it. I love the mosaic motif for combining colors. Yes. You know what? It's funny because there's been a couple of patterns recently that have been released. Quite a few of them have been from Andrea Mowry because she's been working with the Spin Cycle yarns quite a bit. And they all sort of rely on the color change, and they have a very hand-spun look. And I think in a lot of ways, that's one of the reasons why they work so nicely and why some of these patterns are so great, is because they allow that color transition and allow that color change. So it's kind of cool. And I really like it as well. All right, I have a finished project to show you, and I should have left the camera as was, but I wasn't thinking. So this yarn, oh, I know why I was going to change my cameras. Okay, so remember this color and this yarn, and then I'm going to switch over and I'm going to talk about it for a minute, and then we'll come back. So this fleece was from 2015 that I started with my friend Diana, and Diana is one of our Patreon members, and she's also a dear friend of mine, and she blogs over at 100milewear.com. I think it's 100milewear.com. I linked it in the show notes. So if her blog is well worth a read. I didn't, so I will try to remember to do that. We had taken the fleece, and I had never processed a fleece on my own before. And we got this fleece through the guild, and she said to me, I'll split it with you and we can wash it and process it together, and then you'll have sort of done that. And so I said, oh, that would be amazing. Like, thank you so much. So we did, and we washed it all at her house, and then we carded it all up into bats. And I actually talked about this and what that sort of entailed and why they got stored and how they stored for so long in the monthly teaching content that's our 51 yarn spin along for August. So I've linked it in our housekeeping notes for this month, and it's the Grazing the Hillside content. And so after we made all those bats, I stored it. And then I pulled it out for that content, and I got a bit sidetracked and waylaid with what I wanted to do, which I talk about in the monthly vlog that's accessible for all patrons of the community. And I sort of just ended up putting this project aside. And every so often I would pull it out and I'd look at the Ziploc bags and I'd put it back, and I just, for whatever reason, didn't pull it out and actually start spinning. And I think what had happened is I had done a sample at that time, and it didn't turn out the way that I had envisioned and had hoped. I was still a relatively new spinner coming back to my wheel. I really only knew how to do short backward. I didn't know how to manipulate it. I didn't know how to adjust my twist. I didn't know really pretty much anything about more complicated spinning. And so I didn't like my sample, and it sort of ended up being put aside and not worked on again. So because of the snafus that I had with the Grazing the Hillside spin for August, I decided to go back to this and pull it out and do another sample. And I talk about that in the vlog and what happened with that and why I did that. And I was so hooked on the finished yarn, and I talk about it in the vlog how much I loved the finished yarn, because I only did one skein. So I had spun one skein. It was the smallest one, actually. I think it was this one for the content for the 51 yarn spin along, and I say on the vlog that I'm going to finish this spin. So for those who've already watched all that stuff for this month and are all caught up, you can high five me virtually because I finished it. So and for those who haven't caught up on the content or are curious about that content, it is linked in the show notes below. So I two-plied the yarn for the 51 yarn spin along, and then I kind of just continued spinning. So what I did was I took all of the bats, because I had bags and bags and bags of bats. So I took them and I broke them apart so that I had two bats per bobbin. And then, because some of the bats were slightly bigger, some of them were slightly smaller, some of them were a little bit more air was visible through them, some of them were more dense, meaning more fiber was in them. And so I just did 2 bats per bobbin for the spin. So there was still a ton of VM in it, and as I was spinning, there was a lot of VM that was still falling out, and there was a lot of VM on my lap the whole time that I was spinning, and I actually wore my spinning apron because there was so much dust and dirt that came out. And we did this on the drum carders to make the bats. It cleaned a lot of the wool, but you can see from that first photo how much dirt there was in this yarn, or in this fleece. So it was still quite dirty. So if you look at the dyed yarn, it's very clean now. When Katrina was dyeing and when she was spinning it and everything at the end to get it dry, so much of the VM came out. And I don't know if it's because the VM is now dyed and you can't see it. I don't think so. When you look really closely at the yarn, it's just not there. So I went through, I was really on the fence about dyeing this. I love natural white yarn. I love it. Whenever I look at indie dyers, I always look at the Au Naturel or the natural yarn. And I know it's like the undyed factory, blah, 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 but I just love it. So I was really torn, and Katrina had said that she would dye it for me as a gift, which was just so lovely. And so I dropped it off with her, and I said, I don't know about color, just I'll let you know. This is what I'm leaning toward. And she was like, okay, well, have you made up your mind? I was like, oh, I think so. I think you should go ahead and dye it that color. So this is Goldfinch. I am so glad that I chose this color. I was going to do one of her colors where it's like the overlapping dye and there's the layers, but I want to knit an Acer cardigan. I've knit it before, and I really love that cardigan. And I have a couple of t-shirts like this one that have a little bit of this goldy yellow in them. And so a cardigan would coordinate really well in my stash in this color. And so in the end, I went with my gut, and I'm so glad that I did. So I've got 4 skeins. I'm not exactly sure what my yardage is. I wrote it down in my book. I love Clun Forest. Yes. It will leave 4 or 5 minutes for me that I visit. Oh, that's so amazing. I you know what? It's funny because I love Clun Forest, Dorset, Finn, Romney, like all these medium, downy, long wool. Like I love these like medium wools. I just love them. Corriedale. They're my favorites. I just love them. I could work with them. I could honestly work with them probably like for the rest of my spinning career, and I'd be totally happy. I like the down characteristics of Dorset, the down like medium wool like characteristics of Clun. I love the length of Romney and the sheen. I just love Finn because I love Finn. I really, these fibers in this wool gets me really excited. And the fact that I can source a lot of this locally is pretty amazing. So I think I wrote down my yardage prior to washing and dyeing, but I might not have. I have this book that I didn't actually write it down. I've had this book forever. It was something I picked up at like Walmart or something like 15 years ago. And there's project sketches in here. I don't even know. I didn't date anything. Stuff that's been taped in that I wanted to keep. Post-it notes from like sketches that I've like done on the fly, stuff that I did on scrap pieces of paper. Anyways, it's kind of one of those crazy books that I find very useful. So I have page upon page of project planning Yukon. So, but I thought that I had written down my yardage for this, but I guess I didn't. Darn. I wanted to see what I lost because the yarn definitely sproinged, if you will. Yeah, I didn't write it down. Darn. I know that I am somewhere in the range of between 750 and 850 or maybe 900 yards. But I will let you guys know because I'm going to be... What I thought I would do with Acer is because it's a bottom-up sweater, I can knit the body and finish that. And then the sleeves are knit. We talked about this last show. They're knit from the top down, and so I can make 3/4 length sleeves. So if I want to maximize my yardage, for those who don't know the Acer cardigan, I'll just show it to you really quickly. I've knit it before. It's one of my favorite sweaters. It was one of those knits that I have ended up surprising myself with how much I have worn it. And it's by Amy Christoffers. Depends on how you say her name. I've never actually heard her say it, but this is it here. It's got cabling up the front with lace. It's a lace and cable. And this is the one that I knit back in 2012. I actually knit it and cast it off right before James was born. But you guys will know it based on Amy's photo here. It's a very, very popular pattern. So that's what I'm going to make because the gauge will be right. It's knit on 4mm needles. I'll size up to 4.5s probably. And I will keep you posted. There's a couple of places, Katrina said there's a couple of places, I don't know which skein, this skein, where some of the dark dye, it's splattered a little bit here, you see? So because with hand-dyed yarn and indie-dyed yarn, there is always that possibility that might happen. So what I'm going to do with this skein is I'll just stripe it 2x2 with another skein. Might even stripe it 1x1. And that will create interest in the fabric and have that depth, but won't create any pooling. I don't think it'll pool, but just in case. So that is that yarn. I'm so pleased. So thank you to Katrina. I really appreciated it. It was very kind of her. And yeah, it's just really, really cool. I have a little bit of housekeeping and then we will move on to our new segment. Who was it that asked for the new segment? You found it, Suzanne. Okay, good. She was looking for the Acer. Oh, Cheviot. Cheviot's another one that I love. Kelly said, me too. I'm totally the same way. I work a lot with Cheviot. Well, and Kelly, so Kelly G Knits, that's her designer name. You just did that. Maybe you can speak to it in the chat. You just did the pattern for Cheviot, hand-spun Cheviot mitts. So she gives you all of the information that you need to spin for, like how to create the hand-spun that you need for the pattern to then go and knit the mitts. It's just brilliant. And that was Cheviot, I think, wasn't it, Kelly? Speaking of Kelly, we have a pattern giveaway from her that will run into September. So if you can go into the July, August episode thread and hop in there and tell us about something fun that you did this summer. If it's your winter and you're in the Southern Hemisphere, tell us something fun that you've done this winter. And I will randomly draw 3 people to win. And you can, I'll put you in touch with Kelly, and you are going to be gifted with one of her patterns. She's got some great stuff out, especially that one, which I have and I haven't been able to make yet, but one day. Unbraided, the book is available on the craftyjacks.ca website. If you have any questions or you're looking for links, please look at the show notes on patreon.com or /wellfordpearls or wellfordpearls.com or craftyjacks.ca. And thank you to everybody who has ordered a book up to date. Your support means the world. You have no idea. Actually, you probably do, because you are part of this handmade community, maker movement, and you know how much this stuff means. So I take that back. Maker Mornings. We are celebrating our 3-year amazing anniversary here on Patreon this summer. So we had our first Maker Morning in June. We had our second one in July, and we have our next one and our final one this coming Saturday. So this has been something that's just been going on through the summer, and it will stream this weekend on Saturday morning. The post will go live just like it does for the podcast before the Maker Morning starts. It will probably go up on Friday evening, and I will be here making something. I'm not sure what yet, because I'm just in between projects on Saturday morning. So I hope that you are able to join us, and that is for all patrons of the community. And if you want to see those become a regular part of our woolen spinning community and a regular part of what we do here, and you're not currently a patron, hop on over to patreon.com. And all you have to do is pledge like $1 a month, $3 a month. Everything helps. I really appreciate it. So thank you so much. Our 51 yarn spin along this month is Grazing the Hillside. All of that content has been released. Thank you so much for enjoying it thus far, those of you who have already. And our How I Spin content this month is the Dorset kit. So, weaving. This is a new segment because guess what happened? So, I had an opportunity to bring home a Leclerc Nihilist 2. For those who are familiar with floor looms and are sort of familiar with the makes and models out there, this is one of the most common looms out there on the market. They're widely available secondhand. They are big, they are heavy, and they tend to be jack looms, although Leclerc does make a jack type loom. And they also make a countermarch. So the loom that I had hoped to purchase before other things happened, before even my dad, was the 8-shaft Nihilist 2 countermarch loom. And I was hoping to buy that new because it was going to be my one and only loom, and I was going to have it for a million years because we're all going to live to be a million. And so what ended up happening is my friend Felicia has had this loom in her living dining room space, and it was she had the opportunity to do some content on it for the School of Sweet Georgia, and it just, her space couldn't accommodate the loom anymore, and it didn't fit in Katrina's space. And so it came home with me. So I am really thankful to my husband for being so amazing that he was willing to allow our living dining room space to open up this space to allow a big, massive 45-inch loom to go into that space, because it does take over. However, and we don't normally have a TV there, so that's just there because the CrossFit games were on earlier in August, and Mike and I do like to watch that, and so the TV is still set up right now. We just haven't taken it out. So normally that isn't there, but we brought it home and we unloaded it. Our friend Dean helped us, and that's Dean there, and James was trying to treadle on it while we were moving it. That was quite interesting. We had to move the Louette Jane out of the way. So as you can see, the Louette Jane is back in the office right here. I may actually use it on Saturday morning because I want to get a warp onto it. I'm borrowing this currently from a friend of mine, and I will give it back to her when I talk to her and see her. So this is sitting here. The Louette Jane, for those who don't know, is a table loom. So it's on a stand. Jeanette has a stand for hers. And then the Nihilus is a floor loom. It's 4 harness. It's the jack loom version, 4 shaft, and it's got 6 treadles. So I think, and after lots of conversation with Felicia, we both feel that this loom probably will suit my needs for a while. And that when I'm ready to upgrade, I'll basically be like upgrading to the same loom, but in a countermarche. And probably at that time, it will partially be ready because I'm ready for like 6 shafts, 8 shafts, and kind of doing more complicated stuff. So I'm just really thankful. I'm just going to enjoy this in the meantime, and just really enjoy using it. There's a couple of things that needed to be replaced, a couple of things that need to be ordered. So I've done that, and I'm just waiting for it all to arrive, and then I will get a warp onto it. So that takes us to our next project, because we'll move the cameras around. I love that you watch the CrossFit Games. Yeah. So Kelly, my husband and I are both, like, he does CrossFit, and him and I both just enjoy, honestly, watching the craziness that is the CrossFit Games. It is so crazy. And I'm a big fan of Tia-Clair Toomey, and I really like her attitude, and I like her, just her way. And so it's something that it's the one thing, actually, besides camping and traveling and stuff, that my husband and I have in common. So most of the stuff that we do is very separate. So yeah, we always watch the CrossFit Games together. I'm already trying to incorporate space for a loom on the need list when we buy a house. You know what, Kelly? So funny. So it's so funny because I was really torn about bringing something that large into our space, and I was really worried about how it would affect our family living area and this idea of a living studio. So I don't know if I've talked about this idea on the podcast before, but I think I have. My friend Nikki is really into like minimalism, and she loves rearranging spaces and reimagining spaces, and I think she would have been an amazing interior designer, but she's a teacher, so there you go. And she was the one that kind of, and our kids play together all the time, and she was over here one day, and I was kind of lamenting that I always felt like my making was always sort of crammed into the corner, or moved out of the way, or put into the office because it didn't fit whatever was going on in the home. And she kind of came up with this idea of a living studio. And her idea was, why does it have to be removed? Why does it have to be separated or rearranged or accommodated? Why can't you live in the space that you also make in? And so we moved the furniture around to accommodate that idea. And so now our living room, dining room, and we also have a family room that's not pictured in those photos that you just saw, that's at the other end of the house. And the piano is down there, and our books and bookshelves and everything are down there. But the living room, dining room is where we spend the majority of our time. And so my oak cabinet that had always been in the family room, we moved to the living room, dining room, and that sort of started to create this idea, and then my wheels live there now too, this idea of sort of having everything in a place and having a place for it, everything, but not feeling like it had to be separate, that it was okay to host a family dinner in the dining room and the loom is right there. Yes, it's pushed back against the wall, but this is how we live our lives, and these are the things that we love, and it's okay to have them out in the living space. So it's just a really cool idea. And I know when I went to a talk back when I was still in university, actually, I think I was like 19 or 20, I went to a talk in Burnaby with my mom, and it was Kay Fassett. And I've talked about this on the podcast before, but he talks about that and having your stuff out in the common space and looking at your stuff and seeing it and thinking about it and allowing it to be at the forefront of your mind all the time. And that was one of the things that Felicia and I have been talking about, because this loom was in their living dining room space. Same as us, it was in that divider space, that like no man's land, I think of it as. And she said she wove way more because it was right there. And I think there's some wisdom to that. So yeah, it's something I've been thinking about and just sort of mulling over. I love Becca, I'm going to scroll back a little bit. She said, as soon as Gareth saw me looking at these photos on your Instagram, he immediately said, you're not getting one. So funny. And Suzanne, Leclerc looms are awesome. I have an Artisat 8 shaft. Oh, that's awesome. We have a lot of women in our guild that weave on Artisats because they need to be able to fold them. It does fit the loom perfectly, or the room perfectly. I think so too. So I'm starting to say a lot because I'm getting tired. I'm finding my emotional fatigue has been quite high this month. So I know you guys understand. I was also sort of thinking too, with the loom being right there, it means that it's too heavy to take it upstairs. So unless we were going to build it upstairs, it's too heavy to take up the stairs, and it can't turn the corners anyways. So it being down here, we'll be able to move it out when we're ready to move it out. And the other thing is that with it being where it is, there's a door frame right there that goes into the kitchen. So for the longer warps and like workable space, Mike can actually help me get the warps on, which is really great because it does come with a sectional warping kit. And it has all the tools for that, but I don't want to sectionally warp with my hand spun. So, because it'd be too much waste for where I'm at right now. So those are some of the things that I'm thinking about. So these were on my loom on the Louette Jane for a while, and I started them back in April, and I actually wove on them a little bit when we did the June maker morning, and I talked about them a little bit. And these were the warp. I'll lay one out so that you can see. Actually, I'll just hold it up. The warp is the asymmetry at the loom color sample that is part of the Jane Stafford online guild. So on hers, and I'll lay this down so that you can see, on hers, they're quite wide. I made them quite big. Because I really love large dish towels, and it's really hard to find big ones. So I made these extra big, maybe a bit too big, but that's okay. So on hers in the online guild, the navy blue was black. The gold was red. The gray was the same. And the pink that I used was light gray. And then in between was clean white. So it was that like real white, and I used linen. So it's a little bit different. So she used this really bright white, which I used here as the weft, but my warp was a linen color, sort of more of a cream color. And the assignment on the online guild was to play with color and to just see what happens at the loom with your warp and weft, and to see how the colors worked up. And this particular towel, I actually introduced a 6th color because there was the 4 stripes, and then there was the cream. So that was 4 colors. And then I added, 5 colors. And then I added a 6th color in this particular one, which was this really light gray blue. That's probably one of my favorite colors besides this color and gray and navy blue. I did a little bit of a striping study at the other end with the gray, and then I put in a stripe of the pink. So you get that really clean color in some of your squares. And I made sure that they were square. So I did it by measuring it, and you get the clean gray. And then you get these really interesting, I don't know what you call these when they blend like that. I think there's a word for it, the color blending that happens. And it kind of looks a bit speckly. So anyways, each towel is different. I put on a 9-yard warp, and my friend Kelsey kind of looked at me and said, you're crazy. You're going to get so sick of that project. And she was right. But on the other hand, I ended up with 7. There was a lot of loom waste on this because it was my first time. And I made them quite long. They were each 35 inches long. So with the loss at the front of the loom and the loss at the back of the loom, I ended up with only 7 towels. And I think I probably could have done 8 if I had planned it out a bit better. But I really love them. They're very absorbent. They're 2/8 cotton, nothing special. And I just love them. This one was gray, and I did a couple of stripes of white. I hemmed on my sewing machine, so I pulled out my sewing machine. I did a 1-inch color block of weaving. And then I would go into like whatever the towel wanted to be. So then I did a 1/2 inch turned hem. And then I sewed it up on my sewing machine. And actually my sewing machine, I mean, I've got a Workhorse Pfaff from the late 70s, early 80s. That was my mom's first machine. And it's just an awesome sewing machine. But this one with the weft being gray, I mean, it's just, oh, I just love how that turned out. So just really interesting. And that was the whole point of the study, was to just play at the loom, play with colors, play with striping. This one was a yellow warp. I started off with the navy blue, and then I did yellow. And then I played with some striping with the navy blue and the gray, throwing one shuttle at a time. And I did a couple of stripes. And then I repeated it on the other side, but I finished with white instead of the navy blue. Just played. So these ended up being roughly, I'm not actually sure how wide they ended up being. Let me measure them because I have a measuring tape right here. I don't have a measuring tape right here. I know they ended up being roughly 35 inches long, and I think they were 30 inches wide-ish. So, yeah, those are so cool. Gingham is their term. Yeah, there are parts of these that are very like gingham looking. There's a pink one that's a lot like the blue one that I showed you first, where the weft was pink, and they're actually hanging in my kitchen right now. And if you want to know more about these towels, I've written quite an extensive blog post at wealthofpearls.com. So if you want to know more about some of the ins and outs, how I hemmed them, all that kind of stuff, please have a look at that blog post. And I have linked it down below. If I haven't, I will do that, because I talk about like all 7 towels, whereas we just don't have time to do that on the live stream. So the blue I subbed for pink, and then I followed the striping sequence of the warp all the way up, and that probably is my favorite towel. It turned out the best, and yeah, turned out really well, and that's very ginghamy. Any plans for a woolen spinning meetup at Knit City? You know what, Kelly? I was just at Katrina's this morning because I was picking up the yarn, and I was going to ask her about it, and we got talking about other stuff. So, if there is, I will let you know. I haven't gotten that far. I plan to be at Knit City. I don't know if I'll be working in Katrina's booth yet. She doesn't know if she needs the help yet. So I will keep everybody posted. There will be several live streams before Knit City. So yeah, let me keep you posted. I suspect if we do have a meetup, it would probably be on the Sunday, if you want to keep that in mind. I love that you are thinking about how to get the warps on. Oh yeah, thanks, Charlotte. You know, it's so funny. So when I first came to weaving, when I was first exploring it with the rigid heddle and stuff, I just didn't get how you could get the warps on. Like, it just didn't make a lot of sense to me. And I think part of it was there's this mystique, this mystery around weaving that partially exists because a lot of weavers aren't online. They're not on social media. A lot of them are not necessarily part of a generation that is particularly interested in being online. And I'm not trying to like ageify or like be ageist or anything. I think it's just like a lot of the women in our guild that are really, really accomplished weavers, they want to weave. They don't want to waste time farting around with any of this stuff. And they're willing to teach, and they're so forthcoming with their knowledge. It's just amazing. And then we also have a generation of weavers right in our guild anyways. I can only speak to my experience. Who are starting to give up their looms and are starting to give up their floor weaving because they can't get their warps onto their looms. So we've been talking about, one of the ladies in our guild, we've been talking about possibly starting like a bit of an outreach thing where we go and help to put a warp on their loom. And so there was sort of like this mysticism behind it. And I just was like, how do you do it and get them on relatively quickly and relatively without a lot of like complication and stuff, with all these different methods out there? how does that work? And so I think people like Liz Gibson, and there's others like Laura Fry and the School of Sweet Georgia, and Blueprint used to be Craftsy, and all of these online education kind of stuff. It's really helping to demystify some of it. And when I was playing with the rigid heddle, and when I still had my rigid heddle, that really helped me to understand the importance of putting on a warp well, because I put on several warps on that loom that just did not go well, and the tension wasn't right, and I couldn't get it tight enough, the edges were too loose, etc., etc. And so when it was time to sort of go to a table loom or go to a floor loom, the Jane Stafford Online Guild, she goes through several different ways to warp, front to back, back to front. But she doesn't go through sectional warping. Maybe she will in the future, but I know that's not really what she does. But I kept thinking, what is the easiest way to warp a big floor loom when you're dealing with hand spun and you want to maximize your yardage and minimize your loom waste? So one of the things that I ordered for the nihilist, for example, was a back canvas apron that wraps around the back beam and comes up over the back of the loom, that you lash your, I don't know all the terms, that you lash the back rod onto, and that's what you put your cross through, the back of your cross through. And again, that apron can come quite far forward to your harnesses, not too close because then you get all mixed up, but closer, that again, it'll minimize the wastage. So those are some of the things I've been thinking about. And I'll share this stuff on the podcast as time goes on. That's why I wanted to start a separate, like a segment as well. I think we're probably going to start, this is one of the things that's been brewing in the back of my mind, is a live stream that's just weaving, separate, kind of like the Maker Morning in the fall. So for these towels, I never showed my yarn counts. You're right, Eve. So with these ones, on the Jane, I have a 10 dent heddle a 10 dent reed. And so my plan was to warp these up, to slay my reed at 18 ends per inch. But because it's a 10 dent reed, it doesn't really work. And so when I slayed it at 17 and a half, which is what you end up having to do, it's 2221, 2221. It made it way too wide for the loom because the towels are so wide, and this is only a 27. Is it 27 this one, or 21 inch? No, I think it's 27 inches. This is the 27 inch wide Jane. So I re-slayed it at 20 ends per inch, and I did what Jane talks about in the online guild. If you only have access to a 10 dent reed, she talks about slaying it at 20 ends per inch, but then your weft, you weave to 16 ends per inch, picks per inch. And that gives you, in a 1 inch square, the same number as you would get if you wove 18 by 18. Does that make sense? This is like real weaving jargon. So for those who haven't delved into the weaving world yet, it's okay. We will be there to explain it to you when you're ready. But with these ones, because I knew that and I'd already made that mistake with the other ones, I warped these at 17 and a half ends per inch, and I did my math based on 17 ends per inch. And these are called the pinstripe towels. And these are from the Gist yarn site. It's a free pattern, and you hold 3 threads together. I haven't hemmed them yet, so I have to be very gentle with them. You hold three threads together to warp quite quickly, and then you thread your heddles randomly, and you end up with these pinstripes. So you can see here I ended up with 2 pinks next to each other, and I had 3 colors: dark purple, brown, and this really pretty Caudaline pink. So this is one, and I played with some striping in here, color blocking. This is purple, this is brown. It's very subtle, these 2 color differences. If I was to make these again, I would choose either a slightly lighter brown or a slightly lighter purple. They're a little bit too similar. And then this one, so this was a 3-yard warp, and I planned it out a lot better. This towel is probably my favorite because when it's folded, it's the same on both sides. So it's brown in the middle, color blocked, with purple at the top and bottom and pink in the middle, but they're the same front and back. So when you look at the front, if they're hanging on a towel, they would be the same. And then, so these are pressed, but they aren't hemmed. And then there's this one. There's a lot of pink with a stripe of white. And these are, so 3-yard warp, 36 inches per yard. I had very minimal waste because I really was conscious about how much I tied onto the front. I wove right to the end at the back. I think each towel was 30 inches long and they were 21 inches wide. And I had done my math based on a 10% shrinkage and loss. And that was, so they ended up being 29 by 21. So a little bit smaller, a little bit more manageable, very fast to weave, and 3 towels off of a 3-yard warp. So it's pretty good with very minimal wastage. So I just have to hem them. I just haven't done it yet. You guys are going to laugh. The reason why I haven't hemmed them yet is because I have to change the color of thread in my sewing machine. So I will hem these up. And I don't know if they're going to be a gift. I don't think I'm going to keep them. This isn't the color of my kitchen. I had thought about maybe putting them in our guild sale in the fall, but I don't know. It's going to sound kind of funny. I don't know if they're well enough made. And I don't know what they would sell for. I was quite proud of my salvages with these ones. But yeah, I'm just not sure what I'm going to do with them. So that is that project. I love those. Oh, thank you so much, you guys. Maybe I should do them as a giveaway. Give away a couple of them and keep one. Huh. From what I've gathered, it's not... I meant more like, does 20 mean... Oh, okay. So, and how the thickness equates to, in knitting terms, fingering is 2/8, for example. To be honest with you, Eve, I'm actually not sure yet because I'm still learning all of the weights of yarn in weaving terms. So 2/8 I think is 8 2 plies put together. I think I might be wrong. I'm not even going to try to guess. I just, because I'm just learning, and I really wanted to get going with making some tea towels and learning what you could do with 2/8 cotton, for example. And I had worked with that 4/8 cotton for the coasters, not these, but I had worked with that before when I first got the Jane and we first got it warped up. So I'm still learning so much. And actually I organized, but I've given the organization off to other members of the guild, an overshot workshop for the later in the fall that actually I probably am not going to be able to go to because my dad's memorial will be that weekend. But she wants us to warp our looms up with 216. Does that make sense? Something like that. So it's like another weight of weaving yarn that now I get to learn about. So I probably won't be able to take the workshop, but I would really like to be able to still do the samples and whatnot for that workshop. So I'm just finding that slowly I'm just learning all this different stuff. And because I really want to be able to sew with my hand woven fabrics, my first thing that I'd really like to play with is 2/8 cotton woven a little bit looser. So more at like 16 ends per inch once I get onto the nihilist, and I'm calling him Jack. Once I get weaving on Jack, and there's a 12 dent read on that. So warping up to like 16 would be a little bit easier. And then on the Jane here, I would really like to kind of play with how far you can push 2/8 cotton, and at what point could you weave something that you could do a very simple shift scout tee type pattern with, if you guys have seen that on Instagram. The higher the numbers, the finer the yarn. Yes, you're right, Suzanne. Have you guys seen this pattern? I'm sure you have. Let's see if I can find it. This is one of the sewing patterns that I thought would work really well for some hand woven 2/8 cotton. I just need to find it because I saved it the other night. Oh, I know. I'll look up the hashtag. Oh, this isn't it. Oh yeah, this is it. This is a really cute version. So this is the Scout tee. Isn't that cute? Round neck, simple, simple. Saltwater Studio, she did a version of a woven shirt like that where she actually left the sleeve caps as the selvage. So she cut the shirt. So if this is the selvage of the fabric, she left this as the sleeve cap and then cut in to create the shirt. And so then she just sewed like that and finished the edges on her serger. I think she actually just serged the whole thing. So something like that I think would be really neat to kind of get started and see what some of these fabrics can do, and then the wearability of it, because just the comfort of these dish towels and the absorbency already of using them compared to commercial dish towels has been pretty amazing. So is it grain line patterns? I think so. Oh, hi Katie. It'll be available tonight for patrons. So if you, I know you missed most of the show, but it will be available right after this is over. Oh yes, the master yarn chart. That's what we need to look at. So it is Grain Line Studio. That's the pattern is Grain Line Studios, the Scout tee. So I had looked at that, but I'd also thought kind of a pattern hack like what Saltwater Studio did, where she just cut and you left the selvages, and it was a tee with a lot of positive ease. It was on the Gist yarn site. She had shared on her Instagram the project itself, but she didn't show her wearing it, like physically wearing the project. But it was on the Gist yarn site. So this was the shirt. So she left the selvages visible, or sorry, she left the selvages as the sleeve cap, and then this is her wearing it. So cute. So that's Saltwater Studio on the Gist Yarn website. So very, very cool. All right, we have talked a lot today. I hope you guys are all doing really, really well. I told you everything that I could tell you about my weaving. I hope that you are having a wonderful summer, and for all, we've had a challenging summer and a difficult summer. There have been good things. The kids are at camp this week and they're having a blast. Next week we're gonna go to Victoria, just me and the kids, and see my brother and sister-in-law and their kids. So we've got some stuff to look forward to. We have a live stream coming up on Saturday, so I hope that you're able to join us for that. And until next time, happy spinning. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. And it's nice to get back here and be here with the community and here with all of you. You guys are amazing. And please know that I really felt your love over the last couple months. So thank you so much. Until next time, happy spinning. And I will see you guys on Saturday morning. And I will post, the other thing before we go, I haven't posted a schedule for September yet for the live streams, and part of that is because I'm not actually really sure what everything's going to look like, because Nora's starting kindergarten, yay. So I think probably what we'll do is over the next week I'll sit down and I'll look at September, and we'll put in 2 live streams for sure. And what I'm hoping is that we can put in a couple of extra ones where I'm actually at the loom and weaving, and it's sort of a separate thing, a sort of outside of the spinning. So if that's something that interests you, you can learn more at wellforpearls.com or at patreon.com/wellforpearls. The other thing, I started a new Instagram account. So I have my regular Wellford Pearls account that's for podcast stuff and all things spinning, knitting with your hand spun, weaving with your hand spun. That account is not going to change. I've been taking a social media break this summer, so I've really only been checking in a little bit. I haven't been sitting there scrolling. I haven't been keeping up with stuff. If you have tagged me in stuff, or you've tagged me in stories and whatnot, thank you. I probably didn't see it. I needed a step back and I needed quiet, which I think we can all appreciate. But I know there are a lot of people in this community that are here for the spinning because you're a beginning spinner or an intermediate spinner, or you're looking to improve, or you're looking for a community of spinners. I totally get that. I'm in the same boat. So I wanted to kind of keep the weaving, especially because a lot of it is with commercial yarn. I wanted to keep that kind of separate. So if you look at Welford Pearls _weaves, you will find weaving dedicated content. So it's sort of like Felicia. She has Low Meets Loom. It's just for her weaving. And I have done the same thing for my weaving as well, because I think for some of us, that's not necessarily what we're looking for yet. Or it's something that we don't necessarily come to this content at Wool and Spinning for. We're looking more for the spinning content. So I sort of thought, well, if I separate it ever so slightly, then you can interact with both, or you can interact with the one that feels right for you. So Welford Pearls _weaves is the weaving content, weaving with commercial yarn, tea towels, dish towels, hand woven clothing. That's my future and hope. So have a look there if that interests you. Weaving all the things. So true, Suzanne. Thank you so much to you guys. I feel the love from all of you. So thank you so much. And have a wonderful rest of your summer. I will see you on Saturday. And until then, bye guys.